What's going on, guys? Welcome back. This video is for you Aarakocra players and owlbear enthusiasts, because today I'm going to show you how I paint feathers and teach you a few tips and tricks that will help you with your next avian adventurer. Now, the first thing I do when it comes to painting feathered minis is to come up with a real-world reference for inspiration. For this particular mini, I've decided to take inspiration from the long-crested eagle, which look like this. And as I paint, I will constantly refer back to these images to give me an idea of what colors to use where and general patterns that I can implement into the mini. Now that we've picked our reference images, we need to prep our mini, which is going to include removing any layer lines or globs of plastic from the molding and priming with your preferred technique. And if you're not sure which priming technique you want to use, you can check out my video on how priming affects the finished product, which is linked in the description. Now that our prep is all done, we can move on to painting. Which brings us to Eldritch Blast Mini's tip number 1, thin your paints. Thinning your paints is going to be the key factor in keeping all of the details intact. I'm using Vallejo thinner medium to do this, but you can use any brand or even just water to achieve the same effect. As I paint, I'm trying to do an even thin layer over the area, and I'll build up layers in areas I want to be darker or fuller. Now, it's important to be aware that when using thin paints, you'll need to get rid of some of the excess paint that gathers at the end of the brush after you dip it in the paint. You can do this by making a small swipe across a damp paper towel, or as you might be able to tell, my preferred method of getting the excess paint off is to just paint a little bit on my thumb. For the underside of the wings, I'm starting with a slightly darker tone right under the thickest part of the wing to give a little bit of a shadow, and then when that's dried, I'll go back over it with an even thinner application of the original brown. This is a technique called glazing, which is used to change the tones of an already painted area. Okay, another important thing to consider when painting feathers is that they're often layered. You can use that to your advantage and make slight tone changes from one layer to another to add some depth. I recommend doing this to varying degrees though, depending on where the feathers are located on the mini and the colors you're using. Because I'm using a darker brown, any variations are going to be very slight, so that from a distance they kind of blend together. Now with the white paint, I'm thinning it down quite a bit because white paints tend to have a lot more pigment, which makes them thicker. I really want to take advantage of the zenithal primer I did, so using the thinner paint will allow more of the shading to show in areas that I want. The next tip is to take note of the direction the fibers of the feather are moving. Here I'm tapering the edges to a V shape towards the center because that's the way the fibers are oriented. In some cases, such as the tail of this mini, colors will change in a straight line regardless of the feather shape, but knowing the way these fibers are laid out will help guide you with things like wingtips or edge coloring. Another bonus tip that goes along nicely with this is when it comes to the finer details, most feathers have a shaft, which is the harder center line that runs down the length of the feather. Highlighting this a tiny bit brighter than with the rest of the feather will help to create a more lifelike appearance, but be careful with this because it can be very easy to go too bright. Now that I've got the wings all done, I'm going to go ahead and finish this guy up, and I'll see you in a second to take a look at the finished product. Alright, here we are all finished. I just want to take a second here because I think these are some of the best eyes that I've ever done, and of course I didn't record it. I hope you found this video useful, and if so, go ahead and paint that subscribe button gray. Don't forget to let me know what you want to see me do next in the comments, and I'll see you next time.